That okay? They're going. This is Calvin Castine, and it's April 8th, 1999. We have Peter Regnier on the camera, and in just a little bit he'll be grabbing the microphone and maybe getting some interviews. I got to be careful here. I'm stepping in front of some of the on-field cameras. We're at Olympic Stadium for what we hope is not a particularly historical night, in that it could be the final opening night in the history of the Montreal Expos. The Expos on field are exactly 30 years old today. April 8th, 1969, they opened up their on-play history with a game at Shea Stadium against these New York Mets, and I think it's safe to say that very few of these Mets were on the roster at that time. Although there are some names on the Expos side that are still very much involved with the Expos. We're going to read a little bit about the Expos history from some information we got from last year's media guide. The team's first steps happened at a meeting in Chicago on May 27th, 1968, when the city, represented by Mayor Jean Drapeau and an executive vice president, Gary Snyder, were awarded a National League franchise. The city of San Diego came into the fold at the same time. On August 14th, 1968, Montreal officially became the first Canadian city in the majors when the Montreal Baseball Club Limited submitted a $1 million check to Warren Giles, then the National League president, as the first installment of the $10 million cost of the franchise. And it's an interesting figure. $10 million is what this Montreal club first paid to get into the National League. Now you have players who are making $10 million a year. So in the past 30 years, the revenues involved in baseball have changed dramatically. An administrative board, we're going to make room here as Tom Seaver comes walking by, and along with a few other people. Making way for Tom Seaver here, Peter, so I hope you don't mind that. An administrative board was formed under the chairmanship of Charles Bronfman, and right now I'm not sure what they're doing here. Peter's going to go over and looks like he's going to eavesdrop on the Mets. Administrative board was formed under the chairmanship of Charles Bronfman. John McHale was appointed president and chief executive officer. Jim Fanning was hired as a general manager. Jim Fanning, of course, held a lot of different positions with the Expos over the years. Gene Mock became the team's first field manager on September 5th. He was hired the same day that the club logo was revealed and the name Expos was adopted. On October 14th, 1968, the first players were acquired as the Expos and Padres each selected 30 names in the expansion draft held at the Windsor Hotel in Montreal. Manny Mota, then of the Pirates, was the first Expos choice. The Expos completed the first trade, a blockbuster, with the Houston Astros on January 22nd, 1969, when they acquired the team's first big superstar, La Grande Orange, Rusty Staub, for Don Clendenin and Jesus Alou. Jesus Alou, of course, part of the Alou family, Matty, Jesus, and Felipe. Felipe being the oldest, and of course he is the Expos manager and has been doing an outstanding job for the past several years. The Expos made their debut against the Mets, as we said earlier, at Shea Stadium on April 8th, 1969, earning a dramatic 11-10 triumph. The home opener at Park Jerry Park, the first Major League regular season game ever played outside the United States, was on April 14th, 1969, against the St. Louis Cardinals. And again, the Expos squeezed out an 8-7 victory on what is recorded as a warm and sunny day. The Expos called Jerry Park their home from 1969 through 1976, and they then moved into Olympic Stadium. A crowd of 57,592 was there on hand to witness the first game in the new complex. That was April 15th, 1977, 22 years ago. Yuppie, the team's mascot, arrived on the scene in 1979. And that means that I haven't been on DeCary Boulevard since 1976, and it doesn't seem that long ago. And that first Expos game at Shea back on April 8th, 30 years ago today. 44,541 fans were on hand. And then when they opened up at Jerry Park, a capacity of about 28,000, they had 29,184 fans on hand on that April 14th. The Expos opponent on April 8th, 69 was of course the Mets, and Gil Hodges was the Mets manager at that time. The Mets, that was the year they went on to earn the name the Amazing Mets. They won their division by 8 games in a come-from-behind victory over the Chicago Cubs. During the season, they then went on to beat the Atlanta Braves in the National League playoff, and in dramatic fashion defeated the Baltimore Orioles in a series that's still talked about in many, many circles. The Expos' record that year, when the Mets were busy winning it all, Expos finished at 52-110. They lost 37 of their first 48 games, but as we said, they won their home opener, they won their first ever game, and also on April 17th they won their first no-hitter when Bill Stoneman pitched a no-hitter against the Philadelphia Phillies. The attendance for that first year was 1,212,608, which is more than what they attracted last year here at the spacious Olympic Stadium. And before we forget, we want to mention this April 8th. Today is also another historic day in the annals of baseball history. 25 years ago today, Hank Aaron hit home run number 715 to break Babe Ruth's all-time record. We've got a roster that I've dug up from 1969. Gene Mock, as we said, was the manager. They had a colorful team that originally included Mudcat Grant, Jim Grant from the played just 11 games before he was traded to the Cardinals. Maury Wills, who just a few years before that had set the standard for stolen bases in a single season. He was on that original roster. He played only 47 games before being traded back to LA. And Manny Mota also was traded to LA. He played only, I think, about 11 games or so, or maybe 31, I think, with the Expos. Some of the other names on the roster you might remember include Dan McGinn, who was the one of their top relief pitchers. He appeared in 74 games. Elroy Face was one of the great relief pitchers of all time. Appeared in 44 games for the Expos back in 1969. During the season, the Expos acquired Claude Raymond, originally from Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu. Claude Raymond, as Peter points out, another famous Met here. Who's that fellow you just pointed out there, Peter?
That would be Oral Hershiser, starting his first game as a Met tonight.
There you go. And Peter's a big Mets fan, so he's not too interested in this Expo history. But we're going to give him the microphone very shortly here because we're almost done our notes. Claude Raymond came over in the mid-season after appearing in 15 games for the Braves. He played for 10 games here for the Expos and went on to work in the Expos front office for a good number of years. I believe he was the first native Canadian to be on the Expo roster, and of course that was in their first year. Steve Renko is another name longtime fans will remember. He played for the Expos that inaugural season, as did Bill Stoneman, who is still involved. He is currently the Vice President of Baseball Operations for the Expos. Stoneman was their winningest pitcher that year. He won 11 games and lost 19. Another pitcher that people might remember is Gary Waslewski and a fellow named Mike Wegener. The catchers included John Bateman. Ron Brand was their regular catcher, and a fellow whose name the on-field announcer enjoyed pronouncing so much, John Bacabella, was also on a roster. He played 40 games during that first year for the Expos. Bob Bailey was the regular third baseman until he lost his spot to Coco LeBoy, another colorful name. Coco LeBoy finished in second place for the Rookie of the Year honors that year. And he took Bob Bailey's, Bob Bailey thought he'd be the third baseman, so Bob Bailey ended up being a man of many positions that first year, as Coco LeBoy thrilled the local fans. And also Bobby Wine, another well-known name in baseball history. He was the regular shortstop. He appeared in 121 games. The Expos didn't have Ty Cobb, but they had Ty Klein in the outfield, along with Mac Jones and the aforementioned Grand Orange Rusty Staub. Rusty Staub, his number is out on the outfield wall, one of the few numbers retired here for the Expos, and it's very appropriate that we're mentioning his name here with the Mets here, because he's in the Mets Hall of Fame also. So he had a glorious history with both of these clubs, and he was the first superstar here. La Grande Orange, who could ever forget those a fly ball falling over the right field fence and landing in the swimming pool at Jerry Park. Well, with that, we're going to hand Pete Regner the microphone and see what he has to say as we continue to watch these New York Mets warming up, getting their stretching in as the Expos take batting practice. It looks like they're as good a shape as they're going to get. The trainer says that's enough. You guys have certainly gotten in shape.
Hardly any left. Well, Pete Regnier here with Calvin Castine at the Big O, Olympic Stadium in Montreal. Could this be the last day, the last opening day in Montreal Expos history? Let's hope not. Hi, how are you? Welcome to the ballpark. The first thing I noticed when I walked in is, Calvin, get a shot of that roof. It used to be the ugliest orange thing ever devised by man. Now it's a softer blue. It's not so bad. Although if anybody had been up here last year when the roof was off, the sun would shine through the roof on 7 o'clock starts and shine brightly on the third base side. It was beautiful. It was a totally different environment. And I certainly hope that the Montreal organization gets their act together and gets a new downtown ballpark, because the ambience is totally different. As you may see in your picture right now, there's Mike Kincaid, a new player on the Mets, made the team, and right next to him was, of course, probably the most underrated player in the National League. That, of course, is first baseman John Olerud. John Olerud hit for the highest average in Mets history last year. Is a great defensive player and hardly ever swings at a bad pitch. And you'll see that tonight. Everybody strikes out, everybody pops up. But I've seen players swing at pitches over their head, and that man will never do it. Over in the infield, let's see, there's Edgardo Alfonso with his jacket on. Played third base most of his career, but did play second base in the minors at the Double-A level with Ray Ordonez, and they formed a very good double play combination. And there you see a little bit of workings of the double play combination, but that, of course, is not Ray Ordonez. I can't see through the grid, but it looks like it might be Louis Lopez. I'm not sure, but it's not Ray Ordonez. Over at third base is, of course, number 4 over there. That's, of course, Robin Ventura, the high-priced free agent that came over from the White Sox. A true all-star. Definitely will bolster the Mets offense. On the pitching mound, it's one of the heroes of the New York Mets. Will not contribute too much on the field this year, but is certainly a rich resource of knowledge on the playing field. That, of course, number 1, Mookie Wilson. Who can forget Mookie Wilson's hit in Game 6 of the World Series? Absolutely wonderful. That is if you're a Met fan. In the batting cage right now, I can't really see. I think it's Brian McRae, the Met center fielder. We're hoping for a big opening day crowd here, and probably some support should be shown to this organization, and people in upstate New York and in upstate Vermont area should really cling to this team, because this is Major League Baseball. And the closest team besides this is, of course, New York City or Boston, and those are long rides. This is not a long ride for people that live in the North Country, and it's Major League Baseball. And with a brand new ballpark downtown, it truly will be exciting. Hopefully the provincial government will help this team out, and things will go smoothly for the Expos organization. That ball went flying right by us. You couldn't see it. It was off camera. Came out of the cage and just about drilled us.
Because it probably costs a lot of money when they open Expos.
We're thrilled, and you know, it's good for the city of Montreal. The fans come out tonight and support their team because they got a very young, exciting team.
Is there any thoughts amongst players on other teams about the situation here and whether the team stays or goes?
Well, I mean, it's always interesting for us to see, you know, what happens. Again, you know, I think, you know, they're a quality organization. You know, Felipe's an excellent manager, and they have some really good young talent. And you know, you hope that they get the funding they need, and you know, and/or stadium, so they can stay here and be successful. Because you know, there's a lot of tradition here, and they've had some great players in the past. And you know, from a nostalgic standpoint, it would be a shame for the team to leave.
You've got to feel good about what this team's done in the offseason to get ready for a playoff push.
Yeah, I mean, we've hopefully improved our club, and you know, the organization is committed to trying to put a winner on the field, and now hopefully the rest is up to us as players to play together and be consistent and put wins up on the board. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. I think you know, they've made a big commitment here, and we just want to try and follow it through and play hard and play hopefully to get to the playoffs.
A game like this with these two teams, I mean, it really shows the disparity in baseball in terms of salaries. You're the kind of franchise player the Expos could never hope to sign. I mean, do you think about that on a day like today?
Well, I don't really. I mean, I think the situation maybe needs some changing, but I mean, still, you see they have some legitimate superstars over there, Rondell White and Vladimir Guerrero, and they signed them young, and it seems like that they're going to spend the good part of the bulk of their career here because they signed them after their first or second year. And as a player, I mean, that's what I would have wanted. I mean, it wasn't my intention to get out there and I've always liked to have been in a situation where I was locked up for 4 or 5 years, but it never came to that. So you deal with it as the situation presents itself. So I think here, again, it's they have some legitimate young players that are quality major leaguers, and they always play us tough. And I just don't necessarily think that, you know, on a talent level that we're that much far ahead of them. I just think that they basically are just, for whatever reason, unable to keep some of their older players and keep their younger players from going out there. And now it seems they're trying to rectify the situation, and they're a quality team. They know how to scout and draft and develop. So, I mean, they're going that route, and now that they've, like I said, got some legitimate players.
Mike, you're locked up with a long-term contract with the Mets, and the speculation was at the end of last year, before, you know, the negotiations began, that you would never come back to the Mets. Not only did you go back to the Mets, you didn't even listen to an offer from another team. Tell us why you chose the Mets and why it happened so quickly.
I really basically didn't want to start over again, and you know, being with 3 teams in 1 year, I like the guys. I got used to the city, and there was no need for me. I mean, they obviously took care of me, and it wasn't like any sort of process to get it done. It was just very, very fluid, and it was fortunate for me that again, that they're committed to hopefully putting a good team on the field. And so I felt like it was the place I wanted to be, and so it wasn't that hard a decision at all. And again, I want to try and take it to the limit here, and hopefully we can get into the playoffs.
Oral Hershiser makes his first start as a Met tonight. What can you tell us about Oral Hershiser and his guts and determination?
Well, I mean, he's definitely has a lot of experience as a pitcher, and he's very, very much knows how to pitch and wants to win out there. And I'm very much, you know, thankful that he signed with us, and that we can probably utilize his talents and his experience that'll rub off on everybody.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you. All right,
Thanks very much.
Pete Regnier here at Hometown Cable with Tom Seaver.
Guys, they're going to want to go in.
They're going to want to go in the dugout, so.
Might as well not interrupt them, huh?
Tom, 25 years ago today, Hank Aaron. Give us your memories.
I had 2 heroes when I grew up, Sandy Koufax and Henry Aaron. You could call me a front runner, 2 pretty good ones, eh? The first time I faced Henry Aaron, I knew his every move at home plate when he came to the plate. How he put on his helmet and the bat against his hip, etc. And the first time I pitched against him, the sinker inside, he granted into a double play. We were in Atlanta. And the next time up, he hit a home run on about the same kind of pitch, and he stopped being my hero.
People don't realize that Hank Aaron had some speed, didn't he, on the base pass?
Hank Aaron was a tremendous ball player. He was a terrific offensive player. He was a good defensive player. He was a great base runner. He had an excellent arm. You know, because of his hitting, people overlooked how the quality of player that he was from top to bottom. He's a tremendous player.
On this ball club, which might be the last day we see here at the Big O for the Montreal Expos, Felipe Alou has called Vladimir Guerrero, or at least compared him with Roberto Clemente. What do you think about Vladimir Guerrero?
I've never really been able to see him play other than spring training, and that's maybe the first person that I think about. He has that kind of dash, that kind of elan. He's that kind of player. I'm very excited about seeing him play. People say he could be one of the best players in the game. Maybe he's one of the best players in the game already.
One last question before I let you go. Do you think that this Met team that has a pretty decent rotation could use one more stud starter?
Anybody could use a starter. Anybody could use a starter. Doesn't make any difference, you know, number one stud starter you're talking about. Anybody could, you know, baseball, the axiom, you never have enough pitching, is true with every ball club.
I lied. One last question. Would you like to see this ball club stay right here in Montreal?
I would. Baseball, you know, Montreal's always had a great relationship with baseball, going back to the Dodger days, going back to when Jackie Robinson was here, played here, I believe, and
right.
I like this in the minor leagues, yeah, and I think it's, you know, baseball is international. If they're going to go to Mexico and hopefully open up a franchise there, which I would imagine that seems to be logical to have baseball across North America is terrific.
Tom, thanks very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks. Thank you.
Hi, Pete Regnier here in a noisy lobby area of Olympic Stadium, opening day 1999. Will it be the last for the Montreal Expos? I think anybody who likes the Expos even a little bit would say nobody wants them to leave. It's a busy scene here. They're expecting a crowd of over 40,000 people here on opening day. And let's hope it continues and the support swells and the Expos stay here in Montreal. On the field, we did run into a couple of North Country guys from the press. Steve Willett from the Press Republican. I love his Sunday pick columns. They're a riot. If you during football season, if you haven't had a chance to read them, please do yourself a favor. They're a lot of fun. Chris Kelly, one of the sports news guys in the Northern Tier, was here, along with a lot of press. We got to speak with Tom Seaver, who was my idol when I was a kid, and I hope I didn't give that away. He was talking about Hank Aaron being his idol. Little did he know, he was my idol. Tom Seaver, and of course Mike Piazza, the $91 million man who didn't even take one offer from another ball club. The Mets said, "Here, is this what you want?" He said yes, and he stayed. Well, Calvin Castine and I have had a great opening day. The game's about ready to begin. As you can see, the excitement is brewing here at Olympic Stadium. Let's hope that it's not the last season in Montreal Expos history. I'm Pete Regnier, and for Calvin Castine and the whole bunch at Hometown Cable, let's play ball.